Not true, but not surprising he mentioned hair.
I live vicariously through you.
Wow. He's projecting a little bit.
This meeting started off hot.
Yeah. So we'll let you guys go ahead and present to the council, and then Glenn, if Glenn has anything to add in, we can do that, and then we'll have our discussion.
Great. We did get the memo about keeping it short, so we have a really brief set of things to go through, so we'll go ahead and get started.
You got the same mutation?
I said he wouldn't tell anyone, but I guess the cat's out of the bag.
2 for 1 special.
So, all right, talking about the 2024 budget. Last time we met was on May 9th. We came in with a set of projections that kept a lot of things flat, like revenues. We treated 23 as figuring out how to balance that year and going into 24 with similar balances. We worked with a budget where the department requests were integrated pretty much across the board, and we estimated our cash carry forwards like we had before, which we didn't do for this version. The last time we were here, we didn't really estimate any increases in revenues. For this, we've got better data. We've got the assessed valuation from the county. So we did take the very high sales tax growth and we pulled that back from the 14% it was at and settled on 10 year over year. So 22 into 23, 10%, 23 into 24, 10% on that. Property taxes are estimated exactly at the level that the county sent over, so we did not make any changes to that number in the current data. And all of the other revenues are set even to the 23 budget. We did include some dynamic fund balances. We took a much closer look at 2023 because we had a little bit more data, and we left the rest of the budget largely the same on the expenditure side. Made a few tweaks, but where we end up is what we got out of that last meeting. We're going into the budget exercise tonight with our fund categories largely in balance in several areas where we want them to. We've got 2 areas of concern, and one looks like that it might be, but we're really not particularly worried about it going into this budget. For the general fund group of funds, we are looking at burning through quite a bit of the $467,000 balance. We'll get into what actually is going into that in a minute here, and ending with a final balance of $96,000 in the general fund group. For the electric fund, we did expect to draw on reserves, which is exactly where we expected it to be. So that final ending balance was not really a topic for tonight, but we wanted to list it as one of the fund groups. For wastewater, we are ending by adding balance to the wastewater fund, which is where we wanted to be on that. For water, it's the opposite story. We are looking like we're drawing on balance, and we're looking at a negative in that fund at the current status of the budget. So that's something we'll want to look at tonight. And then capital cash is a collection of various capital items, and the balances, the year ends are exactly where we expected them on that fund. The general fund is the first topic du jour, and really the draws on that fund are department capital. So the capital requests in the budget are in the current budget data set. We did, throughout our meetings and finance committee, make a couple of adjustments, but what you see in the balance above is represented here in this table for the general fund, which is capital requests across several departments, including parks, fire, police, and public works. For the water fund, we do have one large project for the phase 1 rural water line replacement that is the main draw on the current balance in the water fund. And when it comes down to it, from the expenditure side, going into this next budget year, those are the draws on the fund balances in the 2 funds of concern. And I expect that that's where we could spend some time discussing tonight. Moving along, we did want to show what the assessed valuation came in at, and we're looking at an increase in general fund revenue of $186,000, an increase in total revenue for property taxes at $261,459, and a lot of decimals and change there, but we'll stick with that 261 number. We did do the revenue neutral analysis, which means that if we brought it back to the prior year, we're looking at dropping off that $261,000. Average value of a mill is about $40,000 based on the 22 numbers. That revenue neutral rate would be a 3.9 mil drop. Which I should add, that means a really big increase in assessed value overall from last year to this year. We did include a little bit of analysis on the impact by taxpayer for a couple different levels of property and for utility franchise fees. I'm not going to speak too much of the franchise fees. I'll let Glenn talk about it a little bit. But the balance of franchise fee and mill levy is an option and a lever to go into this budget discussion with. That is the large conclusions going through the budget process we've been through so far. We're talking about capital, talking about mill levy, and we're talking about some franchise fee items.
What's the total fund balance for all the funds projected 2024? Just kind of figuring out where that lands, just overall from a policy perspective, and then each one.
For all the funds we look at for this budget, we're looking at about $2.2 million in cash. And we're starting going into next year with a little bit more than that. So.
Okay. And then back on the individual funds, wastewater projected negative, correct?
Just water.
Which we knew that.
Yeah.
After all the increases.
Right, we'll eventually catch that.
You what?
It'll eventually catch up.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, we spread it, instead of doing one big hit, we spread it out.
We spread it out over
Last year.
3 years.
We're moving that in a couple of years,
3 years.
3 years.
Glenn, did you have something to add to this before we get into discussion?
Well, you look at the big funds that were laid out here, and you'll see what you see is the beginning balance projected for 2024. It's all positive. The only one that's really struggling there is the water, which we just talked about. The rest of them are in positive territory. And then you go through 24, and the end of 24, you're seeing in red the general fund and the electric fund and the water fund losing. They're all losing money throughout the year and whatever. And the big one in the general fund, of course, is what we're about to talk about. I think are the big drivers down below are the capital ones. So what we just talked about was the increase in assessed valuation, which drives the property tax. So the way we've always approached this is to hold our mill levy neutral, or you can go revenue neutral. And that's really the big decision for the council to make, whether you want to go up, down, keep it as it is, or whatever. The only thing I want to introduce, and we talked about this with the finance committee, is that, I think an opportunity here to capture a little more revenue without shocking everybody. And that's we do have a franchise fee on your major utilities, electric, water, wastewater. It's 5% right now, and has been for a long time. My proposal would be to increase it 1% across the board. And the reason is we gain about $80,000, which is about 2 mills, and it would basically capture a lot of people who do not pay property tax. The biggest ones, of course, are Baker and the school district and all the nonprofits who are not paying this property tax. So it's a revenue producer, but it's also, I think, a fairness issue. So that would produce about 80,000. Then I asked them to look at if we actually reduced our property tax by a mill or whatever that number is going to be, what would that turn out to be? So it's easy on the 1% for franchise fee. If you're using $100 worth of utilities, it's $1 more per month. If it's you're using $200, it's another $2, and so on and so forth. The math is easy on that. Well, is that going to harm anybody? Whatever, no. But the franchise fee then goes from the utilities to the general fund, so it works like property tax or sales tax is what it is. It really is like a sales tax on your utilities. We have franchise fees on the private utilities, whether it's cable or telephone or whatever, but that by state law is capped at 5%. You can't go above that. So, but you can on your own. If we own utilities, we can actually increase it really whatever you want. So I'm not proposing we go crazy on that. So that would be sort of a trade-off. You would increase the utility fees and whatever number we agree on for on the mill levy to actually decrease. But you'd still end up with money ahead. Not a whole lot, it's not a windfall, but you can end up with another $40,000 or $50,000 after it's all said and done. That's a pretty good increase. You know, that's roughly equivalent to another mill on your property.
That's a mill levy.
What's that?
That's a mill levy.
A mill is around 40,000. So
Yeah, that's what I say.
yeah,
You-
that's a
once you
mill,
said- Once you
right?
said it's a mill levy, it's a swap over.
Right. So, yeah. So even if you give half of that back, you're still $40,000-$50,000 ahead, depending on how this all shakes out.
I think the rationale being that 40% of utility customers don't pay property tax.
Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood. I've heard anywhere from 25 to up to 40. Yeah, and obviously the big ones are the schools and,
Right.
and Baker, because they pay no property tax to
Right.
us, but they are utility customers, and they would be the quote unquote losers in this scenario because they're going to see a slight increase in their utilities, but they don't get a decrease in their property tax because they aren't paying us any.
Right.
So that would be the trade-off.
Is that churches too?
Churches and everybody's a nonprofit who does not pay property tax, but if they're a utility customer. It also we have a number of people who live outside the city. Of course, we're not levying property tax on them because we can't, but they would get a 1%. They pay a little higher rate on their utilities right now, but of course, they would be captured under this too. They'd see a 1% increase on that. So, again, for me, it's a way to include more people in our revenue stream who aren't there right now, and then you can decrease people who are paying property tax slightly, or really wherever you want to go with it.
Do we get any property tax from the train sitting up there on the tracks?
No, not that I'm aware of. I believe a railroad law exempts them from a lot of
The
taxations.
federal law does?
Yeah, they've done that. Yeah, this question comes up every town I've been in. I don't believe railroads actually pay property tax to local. They may pay something to the state or something, but I don't believe they ever pay anything to local taxing bodies. So they're not helping either.
Based on these numbers, on the top number where you're showing negatives in the general fund, is that based off of revenue neutral or is that based off of assessed value or mill levy neutral?
Mill levy neutral, that's revenue as is right now.
So it's a $370,000 short.
Right, in the general fund, and that's because of what you see down here below
Mhm.
with about, 10 or 12 different capital projects, and we need to talk about those, which ones will be funded and which ones will not at the end of the day. Because if you do with all that, then you won't be able, you'll be cash, you're gonna be draining your general fund. So obviously you can't do all of that. One thing that we talked about, I think, with Ben the other day was you could package all that into a lease purchase here with the local banks, and over about a 5-year period, happily that payment comes out to be around $75,000 or $80,000, which kind of matches what I'm talking about with the 1% increase in the utilities. I wish I planned all that, but I didn't. It's just a coincidence.
Why?
This still throws a shortfall in it, right?
That's what?
That'd still be a shortfall.
Now, if you financed all that, it would be, it'd be pretty close. Around 450,000 at today's interest rates, around 3.5% over 5 years or whatever the number is. It's going to be about 80,000 a year, which would take all of this out of the current general fund.
Why are we backwards in all this stuff anyway?
The inflation's kicking our butt.
How come we're not picking it up? Are we gonna pick it up? We're gonna try to get it even, or at least?
What do you mean?
How did we get $121,000 behind in water?
There is one major capital project in the 24 budget that's bringing that down right now.
Yeah, that water, you're spending $150,000 on that water line.
On the one that just finished?
No, on the one going outside
The one we're
town.
gonna do?
Yeah, the one the customers are
Yeah.
out toward the old lake.
So I just want to make sure we're all in agreement, understanding that this budget was built with all of the asks by the department heads built in, correct?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the large proportion of those asks that aren't a small increase in wages and inflation
Right.
on costs are right here.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So,
The only one that was taken out today, I talked with Chief Baker, and he said there was no emergency to get that brush truck that was 120.
right,
So we're not showing that here.
I didn't know we had a lot of brush fires involved.
Well, we don't. I mean, so we can live with what we got, which is the converted Humvee that
No,
we did a few
the
years
three-
ago.
We'll live with our Humvee.
We'll live with the Humvee, yeah.
The 361,000 that we have allotted for school, is that in here somewhere?
That's no longer.
Because they never took it.
They never accepted.
They have not acted on that.
Did they give us a letter declining, or?
No, what they said at the meeting was they would look at that month by month. And they would notify us if they were going to do it.
And that was only for this year, and this is for next year.
Yeah, so that'll be at the end of 23 anyway. So they got 6 months to go, but they've made no indication so far they're even close to wanting to do that, so. But the answer to the question is yes, everything minus the
Right.
brush truck.
right, so what's that total? There's 450,
yeah, I zoomed out.
600.
Yeah.
Right,
450 in general fund, another 150 for 600.
out of the water.
Yeah.
Okay.
603,144.
And that's just phase one of the rural water line replacement? Or the entire will?
150,000 will do it all.
Yeah.
Okay, that's phase one, so.
Did I read that right at 163, 653, 144,
Yeah.
453.
650?
603.
603.
Total.
Yeah.
Oh, I got you.
So I mean, really what's the decisions are,
Decisions for us is really to
I mean, so the extremes are, we do none of this.
Right.
We do all of this, and that's gonna have impact on where we end up in the budget, where mill levies could or need to be, whether we have to generate new revenue with franchise. So those are the decisions, right? It's, if we wanna start with, we wanna do all of this, then we kinda gotta figure out what that means. And, where are we gonna get the revenue to finish where we wanna finish? And then if it starts becoming difficult to do that, then I think we gotta talk about what percentage of this do we wanna pull back? And I'm not saying we go through this project by project, I think that's a department head issue. I would think that, I would think on any, my personal opinion, any of the, green space parks, that's more of a council, I think, decision than, trying to figure out what's most important to chief here. And it's almost like, here's how much budget you have this year, spend it the best way you can. So, I guess we start with,
I kind of like the idea that was brought up a while ago by Glenn on the franchise thing. That sounds rather interesting and almost fair.
and so you're talking about the 1% franchise fee increase and the
Water
1 mil
1.5%
decrease?
And the mill decreases. It's a switch over,
Yeah.
and everybody's still paying the same, but they're not paying taxes.
That's not necessarily paying the
tax.
same,
It
yeah,
is a
they may,
tax.
1% on their utility is not necessarily the same as 1 mil for them, but your point is, yeah, there's a trade-off, they're getting,
There's a trade-off, but it sounds like a decent way to go.
yeah.
What's a mill on a $100,000 house? Do you have that?
I have 300,000.
Okay.
Yeah, we got 3, 4, and 5.
300.
So reducing it by 1 mil saves them about $35.
On a $300,000 house?
Yeah, 300,000.
And then what is 1% on that same $300,000 on our utility bill cost?
Right.
That's $70.
Well, it depends on how much utilities you're using. I mean, again, it's 100, it's 1,
Yeah.
200, it's.
So you could calculate what that would have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The higher users are gonna pay more.
yeah, 'cause it's based on a percentage, so, but
Well,
you
350.
would expect that anyway.
Susan's gonna pay more, I won't pay less.
On your average residential bill.
Solar
So
panels
you
now,
got
though.
solar panels.
Yeah.
Already,
Yeah, 30 of them.
How do we collect franchise on solar panels?
You don't.
That's the beauty of the solar panels.
You do
But,
not.
so franchise fees can be, they have to be even across the utilities? Can they be different?
No, you can make them different. You can make them anything you want. I've seen cities do that.
Right.
Make them really odd combinations.
But this math is built on across
It's-
all of it.
Yes, yeah.
What were you thinking about otherwise?
I'm just trying to think of, impact. And is it regressive this way or is it attractive? Are there some utilities we may not want to impose that? Electricity, maybe we do. I mean, the difficult part is I'd love to have that rate study done to see how we compare. So we maybe can figure out a little bit, maybe one, we shouldn't because we're not where we want to be from a rate perspective, but it's just pure speculation until we do that. So I think we kind of assume we got to do them all. And if we do it at 1% or whatever percent.
So you're gonna take 1% on each one, is that?
Yeah. It'd be 5% to 6 on, that's what's been proposed, 5% to 6% on franchise fee on water,
So your
wastewater,
total is gonna be 5%.
on all our utilities.
Okay. What's the mill levy gonna be, just 2?
Mill levy would be, the mill levy, that would equal 2 mills. And I think the proposal was to reduce the mill levy by 1. So we would in effect be gaining revenue, half of that. So 40,000 instead of 80,000.
So you're 40,000 ahead. How you go wrong?
Well, so let me get back to the original premise. We could actually give them both back and maybe not do all of this year. You carve out $40,000 of this budget, and then you could theoretically give 2 mills back. Just food for thought.
I'd just as soon jump on and get it done.
That's one school of thought.
So, given, wages, projected increases for the next year, would we have to call those 2 back to get to, you know what I'm saying? Because all that was based on the mill levy being what it is now, so we'd be in effect down 2 mills and then having to,
It just
Catch
depends
back
on what
up.
your assessed valuation
Yeah,
rate comes
it's always
in at.
that. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
yeah.
The time is gonna eventually come. If we keep, and this is a good way to do it, I like this way, it feels comfortable. But the time is eventually gonna come where we're gonna have to change from doing that and just flat say, okay, we need another 1/3%
Right.
or something, or 1/33 or whatever
Yeah.
percentage of actual payment from that particular facility. This will work a couple of times, but it won't work forever. Now, if you disagree, I'd like to hear it.
Well, we haven't raised our mill levy for the last 5 years and
You what?
we haven't raised the mill levy in the last 5 years and worked off the assessed valuation.
We're not raising it now.
I didn't, that's not what I said. I'm not saying we're raising it. I'm not even saying we're suggesting about raising it.
But eventually,
But we're taking in more revenue than what we would.
I think eventually it's gonna have to change.
Well, for now though, if the assessed value's going up at the rate that it's going, then we can have a shorter mill levy. We can have a smaller mill levy, 2 or 3 mills less, and still be gaining to keep up with inflation, to keep up with cost of living. Wages.
But I'm with you, Jerry. I'm comfortable with the lowering the mills by 1 and doing the utility 1% because I do think that's more fair for the property owners involved.
Well, yes, at this point in time, or for this particular session.
You have as much freedom as the assessed value allows you to have to go either way on that question. But the second that goes back down to normal, you can, then that's what I'm talking about. You have to catch that mill levy again.
We're probably going to see normal next year.
If the county or the state or whoever it is that causes all this to happen continues to raise property taxes, then we're gonna get caught with it on these days and can't do it. we'll have to take a different direction, I feel.
So is there any linkage or availability to use, general fund assess valuation? So I guess my thought process is, we really don't know where we stand. We have a feeling for where we stand on rate structure. Love to be able to help there as well, right? To get more competitive if we can. But so I'm assuming we can't take any of this revenue from the general fund and offset, whether it's headcount or other costs, to drive potential utility rate down. So you take 40,000, you take a mill, you take it,
Reduce.
and then you would have that to offset, move something out of the utility to offset to where you might be able to reduce the rate. I'm just thinking.
How do we
out here.
do that when the incoming product itself is increasing?
Well, you have to stay in line with that, obviously.
But then you're shifting the burden to the lower percentage of property owners. If you're increasing the mill on the property owners,
Right,
you're essentially subsidizing all the utility rate payers,
right. True.
which is less people. Or more people for the utility rates,
Right.
less people for property.
Right. Yeah.
See what, inflation's what, 4.7% since April, or 4.8% since April?
I think in the last 30 days,
In the last, what, 30
the
days?
last 30 days it's dropped to that, but
Then we have to account for that somewhat.
That's
That's what's been
inflation's
done.
been accounted for.
You've got that?
Inflation is built into the budget.
Inflation to what period, what point?
all of next year.
2024.
I think he's asking what percentage.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
It varies. It varies on certain parts of the budget based on the type of commodity. So wages and personnel costs are 2.5%, which is a little bit under inflation. We let the department directors tell us what the actual costs are looking like. So I don't have an exact percentage on everything line by line, but we can probably calculate over year what the
So
increase would be.
department directors have told you 2.5%, is that what you're telling me?
That's what our standard increase in salaries have been.
That's the salary increase.
That's what?
That's the salary increase. We applied that with discussing with the finance committee across the board because it's just like the mayor said, that's the standard year-to-year increase for salaries.
That was discussed it with the mayor and who did you discuss that with?
Finance committee.
Finance committee.
Where's everybody sit on that? I think the main discussion, and we can't have a decision, but main discussion tonight is the mill levy and the utility side on where everybody kind of sits and feels.
So the way we're doing it, Scott, would that take care of the downsides,
which downsides?
the water and the other two?
Yeah, I think the
Can you
plan-
bring that back down, sir?
Well, it won't
Yep.
we won't get to where we want to be, but the plan has the rates increase, so it's been like a 3-year plan.
But you would get there in
Yeah,
3
it's
years.
not going to happen in 2024 completely. It'll be a step in that direction and another one the next year. So it's kind of a step plan. Otherwise, you have to increase your rates dramatically and get it all back in a year. We chose to spread it out.
I mean, I think,
And I say we as the council.
I understand.
Right.
We as a council,
Yes. It may have been
I
4
guess
years.
that
May have
must
been
have
4-year
I
time.
must have been on vacation when you did that.
It may have been
That
before
was
that.
just last year.
Yeah,
Was it?
Yeah.
He was on vacation then.
Go ahead and say it.
you were here.
You were here
We'll
physical.
have to look at the minutes, see how you voted.
Hate to break it to you.
I think if we go up to that list,
Susan,
I was trying to give them out.
It wasn't like
the only one that I mean, we got the department head asked, I mean, the only one that to me is puntable, perhaps in a year where you don't have record assessed valuation and chaotic inflation, is the lake. And that's 75 grand sitting right there.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
I'll just go ahead and say it, I love the lake, I support getting that thing back in shape at some level, but it may not have to be this year, and I'd be willing to punt on that one
I
personally.
think,
Yeah.
I think we can look at other,
I
I've
think
been,
75,000.
That in there, you see.
Yeah, it's their
Yeah.
top line.
Yes.
Because you put it off, put it off, put it off.
I think there are other avenues where, with that lake being what it is, and they, I've talked to a county commissioner kind of about their green space area and doing some things there, so.
None of the other stuff can be fixed with any other money from anywhere else. That
Yeah.
would be, maybe
Right.
get some grants and stuff. out
I
there.
think we can go after some other money outside the budget.
Yeah.
So I'm having those kind of preliminary discussions right now.
With that being said, I do eventually
Are
want to
you
see that
against
happen.
fixing it? Is that what you're saying?
Do what?
Are you against repairing it? Is that what you're saying?
I'll be honest, I'm against repairing it out of the city budget because to repair it right, it's not $75,000. It's 300 and some thousand. We had an engineer look at it in 2018.
And what's your plan for trying to get other funding? How would you do that?
You have grants, we got $3 million for sidewalks. There's other grants out there for green space stuff that isn't there for portable radios or ballistic vests or any of that type of stuff. Skid steers,
If we get a grant, what does that cost us?
20%,
What's 20% of 300,000?
60,000.
That's $15,000 less than what it costs to do it.
No, it's not. Not when
Yeah,
you look
that- I
at
don't-
dredging it.
I think
Oh,
that
what
number
needs to
is
be
putting
done.
a Band-Aid on it. It's not.
That number is just fixing the spillway, not fixing the lake how it should be fixed.
So back to, I mean, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, is like you can shave that off and play, have some more to play around with and.
I guess I missed that actually in the list because I wouldn't support keeping it in this budget.
Nah, not this one.
I agree.
What did you say, Susan?
So I
Rob-
agree
Rob's
with
gonna
that.
rain on our parade.
Rain really hard.
There you go.
So would it help if we split that 150 into 2 years, did 75 a year over the next two instead of trying to do 150 all at once?
No, we're talking Spring Lake.
We're
You're talking about the
Right,
water
no, I
lines?
know, but I mean, as far as the overall bottom line,
Oh.
if we split that water line project into 24, 25 instead of trying to do it all in 24, would that help bring us into closer where we're trying to get to?
I mean,
Can I counter you with a question? Does put that 75 on Spring Lake give us any big gains on that problem?
I'm talking about the water line.
Yeah,
I know,
he's just saying.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, I mean,
No,
okay.
you're right, it's just a Band-Aid.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, I mean, I'd rather get the water line done in 1 year
I would too.
and kick the lake than.
Yeah. Yeah, I would too.
Get the water line done.
You know, we're gonna do that project in-house.
But I'd like to see the lake done.
We
It's
could
gonna take,
even get half of it and start buying pipe
Yeah.
and start, just get
But it's
as much
still
in
got
as we
to
can possibly get in. It's more than what we've got now.
for what?
the general fund
I don't know.
still doesn't fix the problem.
When you dredge that lake, let's say we were to find some funding and be able to actually dredge that thing and do it right, would they possibly come in and just take out the spillway we've repaired anyway?
They could, because they
Dig
got
around
drain.
that, like, I mean, it might be just
Right.
completely wasting that.
I mean, really,
They're gonna have to dig out there a lot.
you gotta drain it.
Yeah.
You're
Most
losing
people wanna
foundation
drain it
that
first.
concrete.
Clean it out, and then repair the spillway and all that stuff.
Any damage that, we don't know if the dam has any damage until we get it drained.
They may come in and be like,
To do it right, you're gonna have to drain it and let it set a couple of 3 years to get it dried out enough to be able to get dozers in there, or whatever it is you're gonna use to do to push the stuff
it's a
out.
spring, how you gonna dry out a spring?
You can make it, you can work it so it works around.
Yeah.
You're right.
What do
It
you
can be
do with it?
done.
What do you do with everything you dig out of it?
So we can buy them a new skid steer and send them up there and tell them to dredge the lake, right?
There you go.
But I guess my point was, even if you take away the spillway, you take away half of the water line, you're only at 150,000. We're showing a $370,000 shortfall.
Yeah, but then you still got tricks in our bag with the franchise fee and,
Right.
That's 40,000.
mhm.
Yeah, that's,
Well, it's 40,000 if you only accept half. If you only It was 80. The number was 80 if you take 1%.
Yeah, but if you drop the mill levy down one,
I'm not advocating maybe for that.
I am. You're double hitting.
What?
I just, if inflation's going down at the rate that we think it is, that we just suggested it might, then you're gonna have to claw that mill back to stay up.
Yeah, but now you're adding on more expenses to the citizens, plus taking all their assessed valuations. So they just saw a 15% increase in their property tax bill, and then now they're seeing a 1% increase in their utilities.
So you could also leave the mill the same and not accept all the assessed valuation.
Yeah, same thing as dropping.
It is. It's just
That's just saying it different.
moving that mill just kind of.
You have to move the mill to keep the revenue the same.
But not 1%, or not 1 mil, not an entire.
2 million.
Well, it's whatever percentage of the assessed valuation you choose to absorb. It's just a math problem. You just change it proportionally to how.
If it's math, we can make it work any way we want to.
I mean, basically. I mean, really, adding 1% to the utilities, if I'm figuring it right in my head real quick and dropping 1 mil, we're not even really saving the citizens that much money. I mean, a property owner that owns, let's say, based on their numbers, a $300,000 house, 1% increase is $35, let's say $300 utility bill on average over that period from all the 3 utilities. That's still $35. So you're basically even.
Yep.
I get it. It's just where do you want to pick from?
What if we push the water line to 25, 26? I mean, I think it, from what we've seen out there the other day, the test, I think it can make it, but I would just like to know that it's on the list somewhere, that
Yeah.
we're working towards it.
I think we're all working toward it.
Wait a minute.
I do. I feel like that anyways.
Wait a minute, I got a question on that. This is dealing with Mr. Horn.
Right.
And if the proposal we have made to Mr. Horn, we do and allow him to do what he wants to do,
Right.
then you're putting that three more years down the road.
Right.
And he's doing this for nothing. Right?
Well, no.
That line,
He
still has access to that line.
Yeah, he'll be paying his normal water usage rate. It's not.
So he will be paying, he's going to pay for water.
Yes, he will pay the deposits and the normal water usage charges.
So we're not losing anything on water loss. Okay.
I think this council needs to figure out how we want to, are we going to just eat all that? Are we going to look to try to recoup some of that over a long period of time? I mean, that's still
Special district.
special district, different rates, I would prefer to push it and, if you think it'll, we're not holding you to it, but
I think the only risk there is an increase in materials over the next 2
Always.
years. That's right.
Always.
It's just something to consider.
You say increase in material?
That would be the only
That's
risk.
gonna
I
happen.
think too, I think the line is, it actually tested way better than I thought it was going to, flow and pressure both out there. And so I think, as long as we know we're working towards that, and 25, 26, we start to get it done, I'd be willing to wager it would be okay.
Got no leaks in it, you don't think?
Oh, I'm sure there's leaks in it. Somewhere. None that we know of, none that have surfaced, but it's probably leaking somewhere.
Is that pretty much in rock?
I would guess a lot of it is, yes.
So where does that even get us? So let's say you take off the Spring Lake 225, and how much do we have to make up? I guess, to keep our reserves at the levels that we're trying to get them to. We got that to think of.
I was kind of wanting to see what the percentages were on the balance
here.
24.
467. So that's what we need to be at.
And we want to add to this, so you need to, in order to start adding, you need to bring down these projects by 370,000. That's when you get to even for the year.
You say even for the year is 23 into 24. Would be the same. What do you mean by even for the year?
In the 2024 budget, we need to make up $370,000, and then we start adding to the fund balance. And the current projects in the general fund alone are 453. So the 370 would either come from that or increase to the franchise fee.
Or combination?
Exactly. And the rural water line, that's in the water fund. That's its own issue, and if that can be moved out to the future, when rates catch up, that would.
And that gives us time to look at a special district and all that stuff too.
I'm comfortable with what we've discussed. If we can make sure that what we're saying comes back to him in a couple of years and he can get the new water line put in, because I feel like it probably needs it. If we take away the 200 or the 150,000.
I think that's the intent.
Yeah, I mean, that's a decision every year. There may be something way more important that
Scott,
pops
it's
up.
all a decision every year.
Right, so I don't know how we're gonna give,
Everything.
I don't know how we can give a commitment.
We can't.
You can't.
Right.
And that's what I heard you ask for. If the intent right now is to do that, my point is that intent may change based on other needs. So I don't know what good talking about that
Okay,
is
then,
today.
then let me say it this way. Can we kind of keep it in mind that it may be, we'd like to see it maybe a little higher on a priority in time to come?
Yeah, so every year we go through that budget process where they bring it forward and we talk about it, and that's where it'll be brought forward every year.
And we also get to speak to it in strategic planning.
Yeah.
So there's some more commitment you can throw at it.
This is no different question than what we talked about with the franchise fee and the property fees. This is no different at all, because we can't tell from year to year what's going to change with property taxes and how that's going to work. So the discussion is actually goes two ways here. I understand what you're saying, and I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. It's the same way regardless of how you go, of which side you go on. It's all in how you decide to recoup the money.
Right. You put a budget together with a plan, which is based on a bunch of assumptions, and they're all going to be correct. That's why you have a reserve fund to protect you if you were overly optimistic, and you can still pay for it, but your reserve fund's going to end up lower than you want it to be, and then next year you're going to have to say, how do I refill that to our target level? They may be doing less the following year to get that done.
Okay, so the reserve fund is now lower than what we'd like to see it, is that correct?
Yes. That's why we're trying to figure out what we
I understand.
can avoid this
I
year.
understand what you're trying to figure out.
Yeah,
I'm not having any problem.
well, that's the discussion, yes. Yeah. And we had what, 370 or 370 to
Get to even
get to even.
in 24.
What we don't see is the number we need to get to policy, 25%.
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, 4 million, 4.3,
Yeah.
25% of that, right?
Yeah, just over $1 million.
Where you at?
Right there.
25%
Oh,
of year-to-year
yeah,
expenditures.
Okay.
So $1 million.
Yep. If
15% are low, 15 to 25 is our policy.
Right.
Mhm.
Target 25.
600 is the low point, and we're at 467. 600 some change.
Do we have anything in those capital projects that leftover ARPA money can plug into to help it?
That's what we put in the general fund.
It's already in there,
Stuff
okay.
That makes that even worse.
Yeah.
If we pull that out.
Don't pull that out.
I can say that on the police department, especially the one big ticket item for the radios.
Yeah.
That is a 2-year deal. I mean, we have 2 years to come in compliance with that, we believe.
So can we start
So
making some of these
could-
changes now to see where we're at?
I'm sorry?
He's just asking we do math along the way to see
Yeah.
Yeah.
hypothetical
let's
math.
do some math.
We're having a reverse auction here.
I got a PDF.
Well, that's why we're here.
So know,
do
you
it
don't know
live.
for sure if that's the,
No, we believe we do,
okay,
but there's no guarantee for that.
yeah.
And if you do defer some of that,
Yeah.
it becomes an obligation to follow
Yeah.
you. There's no getting out of it.
Yeah.
So